Today's episode is brought to you by Viralcast, the first and only completely done-for-you podcast production service. Build new relationships, create a deeper connection with your database, and get exposure to new audiences. Here's how it works. You interview influencers in your market. You start building that new relationship. Then you take that valuable content and share it with your database. Your guest then shares the content with their list. Everybody wins. You get new relationships, you create a deeper connection with your list, and get exposure to new people that you would never have access to. And look, if you're currently mining your database with video, stop. Audio is the new reality. We are living in an influence economy. Exposure is the new social capital. Go to Viralcast with a K to learn more. And right now, for the first 25 subscribers, we're offering a 50% off the getting started price. Hey everybody, I hope you're having a fantastic day. I hope your week and year is shaping up the way you want it to shape up. If you're new, thanks for tuning in. What we do on the show, we talk about entrepreneurship through the lens of a real estate agent. And if you don't sell real estate, that's fine. The stuff we talk about here applies to almost any business. I'll tell you, I just actually I interviewed a psychologist. She happens to listen to the show, and she loves it because, you know, we talk about lead gen, and she uses it in her practice. Pretty good stuff. Now, today's episode, I think it's relatively timely. If you've been listening to me talk about media, if you've listened to Gary Vaynerchuk talk about media, in 2016, we are all media companies. We should be acting like media companies. We live in an influence economy and social capital. The new social capital is exposure. So how are you going to leverage all these platforms that exist out there, from YouTube to Facebook to Twitter to Pinterest to iTunes, all this stuff? So today, my guest is a media expert. And he specializes in getting national exposure. His latest client is a kid, 14-year-old kid, wrote a book, reached out to today's guest for national exposure. The guy's been on the road speaking left and right. In fact, again, this 14-year-old American kid is right now in Australia speaking. So media, guys, media happens. Now, I try to rein this guy in to talk about local, but we mix it in with local and national. So that's it. I hope you like it. Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first million in real estate. Yeah. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go! Yeah!
Today's episode, we talk with a guy who, with just him and a few admins, is able to do 130 deals a year, not working more than 40 hours a week, and never, ever work on the weekends. This guy's have developed the kind of business that we all got into real estate for. Time freedom, financial freedom. Look, here's what we cover. We cover why you should hire an admin or VA right now. We cover how this guy is super, uber efficient and the tools he uses to get more stuff done. You can find me on Twitter at SuperAgentsLive. The hashtag for the show is Unpack That Idea. And if you're not on my list, go to superagentslive.com. Download my free book. I share tips and strategies with my list I don't share anywhere else. And if you happen to feel stuck in your business and feel like you use some help, support, or get some new ideas, go to schoolofprofit.com. You can get some coaching there for less than $100 a month. Today on the show, we're doing something a little bit different. You guys have been hearing me say for the last probably little quarter or so, 3-4 months, is that, we live in an influence economy, right? Everything is vetted around testimonials, around Yelp reviews. Everybody needs social proof. Now, how do you get exposure for your brand? Now, there's local exposure. You can get, more exposed to your sphere of influence. You can get on local television, radio, or you can do something national. Today's guest is a media entrepreneur. He helps people get massive exposure to their brand. I'm thrilled to welcome Andrew Obrien. Hey, Andrew, thanks for taking the time, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Now, listen, I want to get to what you're doing, but I'm always curious about who you are. So give us a little sense of who Andrew Obrien is, and then we'll get to what you're doing in the market.
Yeah, so I started my company about 3 years ago, a different company, and I wrote a little small book, and I began public speaking, and my topic was on trauma and mental health. And so I got into that field pretty easily, and I started getting massive media attention for what I was doing, and I didn't have to use a PR firm or anything. It's something I did on my own, and I just realized I figured a new formula behind media exposure and how to do it without spending that time on PR firms. And what I did was I went through a pretty crazy life growing up, and then I served in the Army. I did 4 years in the Army. I did a year out in Iraq, and I came home and started my own company, got to the top of my field in the trauma industry, and finally decided it was time to make a change. It is a little overwhelming. Sometimes it's hard not to bring back feelings from your clients back to the house, and so it was time to take a little step away and switch over to the media side. A couple of things I accomplished on the trauma side is actually I was just in November, I was speaking at the White House, and I've gotten to travel the world, and I've been on over 70 global media outlets such as MSNBC, USA Today, Huffington Post, Al Jazeera, MTV, all types of things. And so that's what led into me transferring over to this business.
Okay, so I want to know what that formula is, and I don't know how much you can share with us. Hopefully you can share enough where people can get it. But I would say, you, in terms of your exposure, Andrew, I mean, you are dealing with a topic that is extremely topical, right? It's in the news. It's a big deal. Trauma, PSTD, and it's political. So I can see, or I can get a sense of how you might, once you get your story out there, you got some massive traction. Before we get to the formula and how you've kind of worked it out, at the end of the day, man, you can have the best content in the world, but you need to get it out there somehow. So what are some of the first steps that you did that led up to the White House? Because certainly you didn't start there.
No, definitely not. So it was a process. So I always start small and work your way big, and that's what I tell all of my clients is we start with the podcast and blogs and getting to your core audience. And it doesn't matter if that podcast or blog has 5 followers or 50,000. What matters is constantly getting that exposure and showing up in places all around the world, so people start to know your name, so people start to recognize your name. So it's all about, first you want to get onto the smaller ones, which are very easy to get on. They're usually desperate for guests and wanting good content for their audience. So you start there, and then you build your way up. You start building that momentum, and then what I tell everybody is with media exposure comes more media exposure. So every time someone hears you on a smaller podcast or reads you on a smaller blog, they probably know another podcast, or they probably have their own, and they invite you to be a guest on their show. And so it's a constant chain reaction. It's a domino effect of you knock over the first few dominoes, and then all the other ones follow suit. And it just leads into bigger and bigger podcasts and blogs over a time, and then it leads into the national and international channels.
Yeah.
And so the biggest thing I always tell people is personal connection is the biggest part. Press releases have never really worked unless you're already famous. It's about making that personal connections with reporters or contributors or whatever it is, and making that connection first and then pitching the story instead of just going straight to news.com and pitching a story to overflooded inbox.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. I mean, because I agree with you at some level. And, for me, people want to get me on their show all the time. And I'm pretty choosy about whose show I do. And the reason is, and I would love to get your take on this, is, I've gotten on some giant podcasts, and it hasn't moved the needle for me at all. And I think it goes back to what you said, was finding a platform that has your core audience. And I think in order to do that, I think, people in terms of their brand, their product, their service, whatever they need to do or have, they need to step back and figure out what that looks like, right? What is that? What is your avatar? What does your core audience actually look like before you can be deliberate about going out and trying to find a platform? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I do that a lot with my clients, and I teach people how to do that as well. So, when it comes to media exposure, a lot of PR firms out there will go and get you on any media outlet that will have you on. That's not what I focus on because that doesn't benefit you. That doesn't do anything for you, getting you on any outlet that's going to have you on, or even larger ones that doesn't have your avatar, that doesn't have your core audience. And it's because you don't want to waste your time getting in front of people who don't want to buy your service. It's not saying that it's not going to benefit you to get media exposure and have that badge on your website and for some social proof and everything, but you really want to be able to leverage your exposure. So, when you get on these podcasts, it's also good to offer some kind of free thing that makes them engaged, that gets them into your sales funnel, gets them into your email list. And it's sometimes, like for me, I always do a free guide, and that's, of course, something I'm going to offer here too, is I always offer a free guide, the 3 steps to gaining media exposure. Now, we're all entrepreneurs. I'm not going to sit here and lie to all of you. I mean, it's by you doing that, you have to sign up. You have to give me your email to get this free guide. And now you're in my email list. Now I have access to you. And, everybody is so worried about social media, and social media is great. I have nothing against it. But here's the thing is, you post something on Facebook and 10% of your followers see it. 10% of your followers see what you post on Facebook. Send an email out, everybody sees it. Everybody gets that email in their inbox. It goes directly to them.
Yeah, and I think in terms of the audience that I serve, Andrew, I talk with, this show's been entrepreneurship through the lens of a real estate agent, and the stuff that we talk about is actionable, whether you're a painter, plumber, pie maker. But one thing that I see most people failing is that simple thing of building your list. And then once you build your list, interacting with it. So for you, you give away a free guide in exchange for an email. What other ways have you seen out there or have you used in order to continue to build your list?
So for me, everybody has a free guide, right? I mean, most people who have a sales funnel offer some kind of free guide, and so people are getting a little tired of it. And so what I've done is I've taken it one step forward, and this is what I have my clients do as well, and I offer a second free gift. So, for me, what I do is I have an online course. It's a 4-week course, and what I do is at the end of an interview, I always say, hey, if you follow up within 7 days of this podcast releasing, I'll give you free access to the first week of my course. And what that does is it gets immediate engagement, immediate action, because people will think, oh, I'll definitely go get that guide, and then they'll get busy with work and they'll completely forget about it. But if I say, hey, if you do this within 7 days of hearing this, I'll give you free access to something even better.
Yep.
And so that, that's what you want. You want to get them engaged immediately, because with media, it's not just about having that social proof. It's using that to really, build a brand and build an audience behind you.
Yep, I agree. Okay. So, with that, right, having a timeline, you have 7 days or, scarcity, for the first 10 people, all that stuff works. Okay. So people, and again, everybody listening to this, if you are a realtor and you're not offering a free book, 7 tips on how to get the most money, 5 tips on getting, selling your house in 30 days, whatever, like go do that. Okay. So now these guys, they have a giveaway, an ethical bribe. What's the next step? Now I build this list. I'm gonna start to focus. I know what my avatar looks like, what my ideal audience client looks like. I'm going to reach out to some podcasts or some blogs, right? Somebody who already has a platform. How do I leverage that into, what are the next steps? Do I then try to take that to the local morning news station? Because I can tell you, from my belief, and I'd love to get your take on this, Andrew, I think those morning, television who are doing, 3-minute, 2-minute segments, I think they're more hungry for content than even, podcasts are.
Right, and TV is great. A lot of my exposure has been on TV, and I'll tell you right now that sales, I've never made a sale from TV. It's good for social proof. People see you all over TV. They get this celebrity thought about you. They start to think, oh, this guy is a celebrity because he's been on TV so many times. And When in reality, that's not true. But I've actually had people tell me, when they see me out in public, they're like, hey, you're that famous veteran that's doing all these things. And it's like, oh, I'm not famous, but they think I am because I've been on TV a few times. So it's good for the social proof, but it doesn't really do much as far as, increasing sales and leads. It's just good to have that on your website where they can watch a video of you on TV. People are impressed by that.
Yeah.
But the majority of my sales. So when I first started speaking, I was speaking for free. I spent $10,000 of money, and I traveled around the country, on tour bus speaking for free to nonprofits. Got media exposure everywhere. And then I had an article release here in Austin locally. A reporter did an article on me and made front page and full spread on the inside, and that was picked up by the Associated Press, and that went all around the world. And that's what led into my first paid speaking engagement was, an article of mine being picked up by the Associated Press. So I've always believed more into articles and magazines and newspapers and things of that sort, rather than TV, just because it has a better way of spreading further than just TV.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And I think just I hear you, and I agree with you with probably what you do with the TV notion. However, with our audience, selling real estate, hyper local, being on that would drive sales for those guys because that's social proof is huge. For realtors. So what's the end game? What's the end game? So I know there's a kid, Caleb Maddox, who's a client of yours, and he's done a great job with building his brand and getting it out there. For a guy like Caleb, who's, and again, you can give a 10-second overview who Caleb is, but what's the end game for somebody like a Caleb or your clients?
So Caleb is a 14-year-old entrepreneur who's doing amazing things. He's actually in Australia right now speaking with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Jeez.
And so this kid is doing more than the average adult entrepreneur wants to do. He's already accomplished more than most of us have. He's a lot easier to get in the media because he's easy to leverage. A 14-year-old entrepreneur traveling the world as a public speaker and an author, that is easy. That media is hungry for stuff like that. Now, my other clients, a lot of them I work with very top-level entrepreneurs, and they all have things I can leverage, but Caleb's a little more simple. But what it is it's just about making those personal connections and leveraging your major accomplishments. So, for example, I have an entrepreneur who I work with who was deemed one of the top 50 female entrepreneurs in Australia. Now, she was deemed that 5 years ago. But there's no time limit on your accomplishments. If it's an accomplishment, I don't have to put a date. I just have to say, hey, here's my client. She was deemed one of the top 50 entrepreneurs in Australia. I don't have to put when. And so it's about just leveraging your accomplishments and using that to make people feel like they'd feel honored to have you on their podcast, honored to have you on their blog, or that you would give great content to their audience.
Okay. So for our audience, they've sold $1 billion worth of real estate, or they're they get 95% of their listings, they get full price, or something like that. So that's kind of their USP, their unique selling, their value prop. Should they, Andrew? PR web is what PR web is, and I'll let you explain that. Should these people take their value proposition to the market and blow it out on PR web to hopefully get the local radio, newspaper guy, whatever, to get some interest in them?
I'm not going to sit here and say it won't work, but I can say that I rarely have seen that work.
Okay.
You may get some blog posts and some smaller outlets that see it and want to use it, but PR web and things like that, I just feel personally that it's a waste of time. Now, I speak to a lot of people who do local business as well. Now, a lot of my clientele is national, but I speak to people that do local too, and they have the same mind frame of, I just want to get on the local media. And what I tell those people is, look, it's good to get national coverage no matter what, because when you get that national coverage, it makes people that are local want to work with you even more.
Yeah.
Because now they've got this person that's got this national coverage in their hometown, and they know that they can trust in this person to make them the most money, or help them sell a house, or sell it, or buy a house from this person, because they know what they're doing. And it's always good to create that national authority behind your name, to become the authority in your field, where people seek you out. It's not that you having to, because that's what media does. It makes it to where you don't have to seek other people out. You can actually make it to where they're seeking you out.
And I think it's important to know that somebody like a Gary Vaynerchuk, or even a Grant Cardone, who I know and who's been on this show, I've been on his show. These guys create their own press. They create their own media. They're not necessarily waiting for Grant's not waiting for the local or national news outlets to find him. He creates it. And I want to run something by you, Andrew. We just launched a service here. It's called Viralcast, and it's a done-for-you podcasting service. Okay, so instead of you trying to get on other people's shows, I'm suggesting for listeners of the show and everybody to launch their own show. Now, here's how I'm suggesting they use it, and I'd love to get your take on it. So, three ways. So, number one, I launch my own show, the Andrew Show. And again, I'm a real estate agent. I go out and I find influencers in the market, right? Entrepreneurs, investors, whatever. It could even be that local writer. I invite them on my show. Right, I start to build a relationship with them. I take that content, I use that content to feed to my database, right? So I'm feeding my list, valuable content. And the hope is that, all these people that I'm bringing on consider our episode, my interview with you, press. And so what they do is they take the link and submit it to their database, and all of a sudden now, I get exposure, I get credibility. There's a lot to be said for success by association. What do you think about that?
Oh, I'm a huge believer in that. So I just started my own podcast myself, and I haven't even launched it yet. But I'm using a similar service that people that do it for me, because it's not my strong point, and I'm an entrepreneur who knows you always hire out for your weak points and focus on your strong ones. And so I'm doing the same thing, and all I will have on my podcast are millionaires. And that's because that's the type of client, that's the type of guest I want on my podcast, because I want my, most of my audience to be able to really look at my guests and feel, like they're getting valuable content. So that I'm a firm believer in that. I am a firm believer in creating your own media. And it's really good just to buid that relationship.
Yeah.
Just to build that relationship with Grant Cardone, Gary Vaynerchuk, Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, whoever it is. It's good to start creating that relationship, because then you're able to take that relationship to the next level eventually.
Yeah, I agree. And look, man, I'm worth a couple million. I'll come on your show if you need some good guests.
I would love that.
Okay, so listen, just to kind of wrap this up here, what is something that I should have asked you but I didn't?
So I want to give one tip that I give on every podcast, because it's something I'm trying to get spread out there as far as possible, doing it for free, and no one thinks about this, but it's the most simple thing to do. So let's say we're talking to realtors right now, and we're talking to people who want to focus on their local markets. So what you want to do is you want to make a Facebook ad. And in this Facebook ad, you make a 60-second video that describes who you are, what you've accomplished, what you do, and that you want to be on their show. And after that, what you do is you take that video, you start this Facebook ad, and you target reporter, journalist. You target those job titles. And then you target the companies. You target the local news stations, the whatever, because these people are constantly on their Facebook just like we are. And so when you're showing up in their newsfeed and you're targeting it specifically to media outlets that you want to be on, that's in your local industry, now you've got your face in front of them to where you don't have to worry about sending them a message. If they like you, if they see your message, if they really like your video, they're going to contact you and be like, hey, we really want you on our show. And I've seen this work many times, and no one's doing it. And it's the most simple thing to do.
That's a great idea. And I think you could for Andrew Obrien, I could also create on Google, right, pay per click, I could create an ad and have your name in it, right? And because at some point in the next month, you're probably going to Google yourself. So if I create this ad and then you go Google your name, Andrew Obrien, and it pops up, you're like, what the heck? My name, it's an ad. You're going to click it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, Andrew, what's up? I know what you're doing. I'd love to come on your show. That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it's the most simple things that no one talks about that can make the biggest change in your business.
It only takes one thing. And the other thing, Andrew, and I know you know this, but it only takes one big time relationship with like a Gary Vaynerchuk or a Tony Robbins, or a Russell Brunson, to make a massive change in your business and in your life. So look, I always ask for a book recommendation, and I didn't tee you up on this, but what's a guy like you read? And here's how I tee everybody else up. And you don't necessarily have to follow this one because you don't sell real estate, but here's the setup. I'm an aspiring agent. I have $25. What book should I go buy today?
The Power of Broke. I love it, and I will always love that book.
Damon,
because Damon John. He is an amazing guy. I came from nothing, and I've created something out of myself, and I love reading stuff like that. It's great content. So I am a big believer in The Power of Broke. Oh, and one more thing. You were just talking about relationships. I just wanted to hit on that real quick. So I was just discussing Caleb Maddox, who's my 14-year-old client, and ever since I met Caleb, my business has quadrupled since I've been representing Caleb. And so that's proof right there that just by making that one connection, by doing something for that one person, you get a lot more business out of it.
And how did I know I saw something on your site or something somewhere, but Caleb, oh shit.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
I don't know if it's Skype again or what. Sorry, but that's all right. I can edit that out, obviously. So again, what I was saying, Andrew, is Caleb reached out to you. How did you get sort of a quote unquote marquee client like Caleb?
So actually, Caleb didn't reach out to me. I reached out to him, and I contacted Caleb, and I contacted his dad. And I said, "Hey guys, look, this is what I've done. I've found over 70 global media outlets around the world. I want to help Caleb, and I'm going to do it for free."
Yeah.
And you offer that to someone, and you show proof, your social proof, and you're saying that it's not going to cost them anything. They're going to want to talk to you. So we had a conversation, and we signed an agreement that says, every time that I get Caleb media, it's just a simple exchange where I just want recognition as his agent. I just want recognition as the guy getting him the media.
Right.
And I don't need any financial gain from that, because just by representing him, I'm getting that financial gain.
Absolutely, man. That's a great idea. And
so
again, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No. I love it, and I think again, for our audience that's listening, that professional athlete, that celebrity, somebody in your market, why not reach out to them and go, "Hey, look, for you, because of who you are, I'll sell your house for free." And look, that's huge, right? They have $1 million house, $2 million house. At one side on $1 million house is $30,000. So you reach out and go, "Hey, I'm going to give you a $30,000 gift." But at the end of the day, just like Andrew was saying, once you sell Kobe Bryant's house, that's it. You can use that for the next 10 years. There's no expiration date on that. So I love that. I want to ask you, I was going to wrap up, but I want to ask you something else. When you, Andrew, you did your speaking events for free, you got some exposure, you leveraged that. You reached out to Caleb, and you're doing it for free. I think one thing that speaks to you, Andrew, is having an abundance mindset. And I think too many people in the world have a scarcity mindset, like, "Oh crap, I got to get this deal right now." How do you think you developed that abundance mindset?
Well, I realized every time I was desperate for sales, they never happened. Every time I tried really hard at sales, I never got them. And I didn't understand it. But what I realized was when I'm able to do this free work, because, free work always leads into something. And I just kind of finally clicked in my head, hey, every time I've done something for free, it's led into me making more money at some point. And so I had to get into that mindset of, especially, coming into the media business. This is a whole new side of business. And in the past 3 days, I've signed a few clients, and I've profited a good amount of money. And it's just because I did free work, it always ends up benefiting me. And that's what led into my mindset of, okay, I need to stop trying to just sell everybody and find a way to make free work benefit me.
Right. Got it. So do you think, Andrew, with your background, right, in the Army, you talk about trauma. I would venture to say you're speaking about that because it's near and dear. Maybe you experienced some of that. Do you have a personal habit that you think has contributed to your success today?
It's my persistence. I built a habit of never giving up. So my habit is when I hear no, I don't accept it. And it's not like, I'm not one of those pushy salesmen. I'm not one of those pushy salesmen that makes someone feel guilty for saying no to me. But I just try my best to make sure that no turns into a yes. So I just got Caleb on Entrepreneur, Huffington Post, and Forbes within 3 days. And the reason the guy from Entrepreneur reached out to me, and he also writes for Success, and he said, he wants to write about Caleb for Success magazine. And he said, the reason I featured Caleb, he said, one is because there's a video of him on Grant Cardone's show. And so there's your social proof. And two, he said, you wouldn't leave me alone, man. He said, you walked the line of almost being annoying, but you weren't quite annoying. And so you just made sure that I engaged with you in conversation. And that's what made me decide to feature Caleb. And that's what I love. It's just that persistence and that not being scared to offend someone, because I want to make sure I'm doing the best that I can for my clients and for my family. I mean, I'm feeding my family too.
Sure. Well, and the other thing for that Forbes guy, that Success guy, I mean, you're giving him, I mean, that's his job, right? That's how he feeds, getting great content. Well, so let me ask you this. I mean, again, Grant had me on his show, and on YouTube that has 60,000 views or something like that. Should I be trying to leverage that into a HuffPost, Entrepreneur, Forbes feature?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. You always want to leverage those big outlets to get you on more media because it impresses people. Everybody knows Grant Cardone. Anyone that sells anything knows Grant Cardone. And so if you've been on his show, that's a great thing to leverage. That's going to get you on that media that you want to be on. And it's going to happen really easily because, the Entrepreneur guy told me straight up that was one of the deciding factors was seeing him on the Power Players with Grant Cardone.
That's interesting, man. That's interesting. Okay, dang. Maybe you should have repped me. I don't know. All right, buddy. Hey, this has been great. I appreciate you coming on. I always encourage my audience, if they've gotten anything out of this, to reach out and to say thank you to you. Where can people find you, Andrew?
So you can find me at patafactus.com, and that's PATEFACTUS.com. And I'll give you some links for the show notes, too, where they can get the free book and access to the first week of my course for free as well.
Okay, awesome. And I'm sure everybody out there walking their dog, running on the beach, there's no way you're going to remember Patafactus. That's a crazy name. We'll have that on the show notes, so just go to superagentslive.com, look for Andrew Obrien, and everything will be there. Andrew, hey, man, I'll be the first guy to kick off the thank you train. Thanks, bud. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
All right. This show is produced by me, Toby Salgado, with help from our research team and production done by Viralcast. If you're building a team and want to make sure you're doing it the most efficient way, reach out to Corcoran Coaching. They coach 83 of the nation's top producing teams, and for our listeners, they'll give you a free business evaluation. Send an email to bubba@corcorancoaching.com and let them know I told you guys to call.
Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, yo. This is 10% luck, 20% skill, 15%